Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 certification exam preparation course, and in this lab, another one of my favorites from the course, we're going to be taking a look at Lab 6.3.6, where we're actually going to be building a CI/CD pipeline using Jenkins. And this video is going to focus on part number 2, where we're going to look at how we would commit that sample Python app along with all of its supporting files to GitHub. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing we need to do is get to our GitHub repository, where we're going to create a new repository, and they give us some information that they want to see. So the repository name here is going to be sample-app. Now you can see that name is available, so fantastic. And what are we going to do here? We're going to explore CI/CD with GitHub and Jenkins. And I'm even going to put in here lab 6.3.6. All right, we're going to make this a private repository. So we're going to be able to choose who sees it, and then that's pretty much it. We could add a README file or the git ignore or choose a license, but we're good. So we'll leave those options as the defaults. We're going to click on Create Repository, and there we go. So our repository is set. Now, here's what we want to do next. We're going to transition over to the virtual machine, and we're going to put in or configure our Git credentials. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go to, let's see, we could do a git config here, and we'll say --global, and we're going to put in user.name, and this is going to be Travis P. Bonfili, and we're basically staging the information that we need for GitHub here, and then user.email, and that is going to be travispbonfili@gmail.com. All right, now we could do other things, right? We could say git config, and I could say --global, and we could put user initials, and we could just simply put in here TPB, like that. And so there were some other settings we had looked at earlier on when we explored GitHub. So now we want to initialize a directory as our Git repository. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and say cd into labs, devnet, Jenkins, and in here you can see we've got that sample app directory. So if I say ls-lai, you can see that the sample app is in here. If we take a look at the files, like the sample app.py, you can see that the code is already here. What about the bash script sample-app? So if I was to say more sample-app.sh, you can see that the file is already here, right? So all of these things were already staged for us in this directory and ready to go. But what is not in here is the .git directory. In other words, we have not initiated or initialized this directory as a Git repo. So what do? We just say git init. And there we go. And so now when I say ls-la, you'll see we have that .git directory, and git is actually tracking what we're doing now. So you might remember that when we did the git init, that we could then put in a source for our remote GitHub repository. And so that's what we're going to do again here. And so we're basically going to say git remote, add origin. And again, that origin right there, that's just a word. Think of it as like an alias, a placeholder, whatever the case may be, that we're going to be referring to this remote GitHub repository later. Or we'll refer to my GitHub repository by just simply using origin, right? So we're going to say https github.com/Travis P. Bonfili / the name of our GitHub repo, which was sampleapp.git. And again, that .git at the end is indicating that, yes, this is a GitHub repo. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. So how could we check that? I could say git remote -v, right? And that shows me right now what my remote GitHub repository is. So if I was doing push or fetch and I was using origin, right? You can see here I'm using origin. It's going to respond. It's going to relate to that. So we've got that taken care of. The next thing to do would be to go ahead and add the files to move them from the working directory here on my DEVASC virtual machine into the staging area. So we could say git add. Now remember, if I did a dot, that would mean things in the current directory. Excuse me. But we can also use an asterisk, right? So now if I say git status, you can see that we've got a directory. We've got a lot of stuff going on here. We've got the templates directory, the static directory, and then those two files, the bash shell script and then our Python script that's going to build that Flask application. So all of these things now have been moved from the working directory into my staging area, or the working area into the staging area. And so now that we see that, we can either remove those files. I see get the command there, git rm cache, and then we could list the files or do the asterisk again. Or we can commit these files, right, and get them into our local Git repo. So we're going to say git commit -m, and we're going to say committing sample-app, files, and I'll put in here number 01, right? So this is our first commit. All right, so I'm going to hit enter, and you can see there that when we do a git status now, that we are on the main branch. There's nothing to commit. Again, the tree is clean. And so now that these things have been committed using the local Git utility, right, and they're part of my main branch, I can now push this up to my GitHub repo. And we would simply say git push origin, right? So I'm pushing to that remote origin that I indicated. And what am I pushing? I'm pushing the things that are on the main branch. Now, when I hit enter, we're going to get prompted for the username. So my username is Travis P. Bonfili, and it's asking for a password. Remember, this is not actually a password it's asking for. As of August last year, I think, or 2021, GitHub is no longer using username password. That is my personal access token. And so this is, let me grab it again. That is sort of the latest personal access token I'm using here. I'm going to go ahead and say copy. We'll pop over to this other screen. I'm going to drop this in, paste, and hopefully it took that. And we hit enter. And what does it say? Support for password authentication was removed. And so it looks like it might not have taken. Let's run that again. Again, we'll say Travis P. Bonfigli, and it wants a personal access token. Let me make sure that and again, it left off the G at the very beginning. So I'm going to do edit, copy. Again, in the VM here on the Mac and VMware Fusion, I'm always challenged with copying and pasting on the DEVASC virtual machine. So let's do this again. Let's give it a try here, and hopefully, there we go. So just a typo there in the password. So you can see here, we've got this new branch, and we push from our main branch to the main branch in GitHub. So what are we going to have to do to check this? Well, easy enough. Let's float back over here, and let's click refresh. And take a look at that. Pretty cool, right? That's my first commit. So on subsequent commits, I would probably put in maybe a different number here, maybe the date. You can see that it says 2 minutes ago. Now, remember, this is just a GitHub repository, right? I didn't do the commit here. I'm pushing what I did commit locally on my DEVASC virtual machine. So it says 2 minutes ago because that was when we did the git commit on the DEVASC virtual machine. And what do we have here? We've got the static directory, right? I can pop back up. We've got the templates directory where that index.html is at. And then we've got our sample app py files. So again, I could add a README here that tells all about what this is going to do, but we're going to leave that for subsequent steps. And so at this point, we've completed part 3 of this lab. What have we done? Well, we went ahead, we initialized our GitHub repo, and we pushed everything up to our or I should say our GitHub repo. So we created our GitHub repo. We initialized our Git repository on the local DEVASC machine in that Jenkins directory. And then we came back here to GitHub, and sometimes I apologize. Sometimes I'll say GitHub when I'm referring to Git on the DEVASC virtual machine. But we've got everything staged, ready to go. And so that is going to do it for Lab 636, part number 2, where we kicked off how we're going to build a CI/CD pipeline using Jenkins. All right, now we're going to take a look at part number 3 in our next video, where we're going to modify that sample app code and we're going to push changes to Git. All right, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.